I'm Jim Fitzgerald, the President of IT Optimization. IT Optimization develops innovative solutions for forward-looking IT organizations. These solutions move IT organizations towards ever-increasing business integration. All solutions are advanced but executable today and able to deliver tangible value. Solutions fall in one of three different areas: current solutions, near-term solutions, and future solutions. Today we're going to talk about a near-term solution, and that is building a service level agreement for your first mission-critical business service. Let's take a look at the agenda. The agenda is basically divided into two sections. The first is the business case, and the second discusses the build cases needed to build a service level agreement. So in the business case, we'll talk about where service level agreements are today, what the business case is for building a service level agreement, how come you don't really see them today against critical business services, and the potential inhibitors to a successful project. Next, the service level agreement build phases, of which there are 5. We'll discuss those. Let's take a look at SLAs in today's world. Do SLAs really exist in today's world? These are things that I've heard customers refer to as SLAs, but I would not refer to them as SLAs. One is an agreement with a telecom provider or other narrow service provider. Unless the service level agreement is around a complete business service from start to finish, I would not call it a service level agreement. So these so-called SLAs with telecom providers are actually underpinning contracts. The same with outsourcers. Unless that outsourcer is handling the service from soup to nuts, it is handling a piece of the service, then it is really also an underpinning contract. Now, the last bullet is an area that ITIL and I will disagree just a little bit. I look at a separation between business and IT. Business cares about a particular service delivered with a certain availability and performance, and it's up to IT to deliver that. So I think that's where the agreement is. It's not whether IT will respond to an incident within a certain amount of time. I would not call that a service level agreement or an underpinning contract. Let's talk a little bit more here next about how come real service level agreements don't exist. There are many reasons service level agreements don't exist on very critical applications. I've just listed a few here. First, the thought that it's too hard to build one. Well, we'll go through the process later and you'll get to determine that yourself. I don't think it's too hard to build one. I think there's got to be other reasons if you don't want to do it. There is no process. You need a process to do any complex flow of a project. And there is a process that I'll show you later to go through to build that service level agreement. The business is not interested in a service level agreement. Well, that may or may not be true. Because if you go back and ask your business leaders if they are interested in an agreement between you and them to deliver a service at a cost, you may find that there's a lot more interest than you thought there was. Also, it could be that they are on their own thinking about service level agreements, but just haven't broached the subject with you yet. The service level agreement is a commitment. It's a commitment on the side of IT, and it's a commitment on the side of the business. The service level agreement has a risk that it will demonstrate that the value that the business expects is not there. And when I say value, I'm talking about value, and that's delivering a particular service at a particular cost. When you go through this process, you're going to find that you're going to aggregate the different costs, put them all together, and then present that to the business as a cost to deliver a particular service at a level of service. And it's possible that they'll look at that and say, that's not acceptable. Lastly, service level agreements change the cost modeling in IT. Right now, costs or revenue for IT is generated from annual budgets and negotiations to say, okay, that it will cost this much to run IT. But when you put in a service level agreement, you're narrowing that down to, I will deliver this service to your customers at a level we both agree at this particular cost. So that is an entirely different cost model. Let's now turn to the argument for an SLA. I can't think of any argument stronger than the fact that a service level agreement aligns what is really important to the business with IT's ability to deliver that. A contract with the business really helps the IT organization from top to bottom focus on what it is that's important for the business to be successful. Everybody within an IT organization will have a very good feeling of whether something is attached to a service level agreement, a piece of technology, or whether it's not attached to a service level agreement. And if it is attached to a service level agreement, there'll be something in their head that says, we need to make sure that this is going to be available and giving the performance that we have guaranteed our customer that it will deliver. A service level agreement takes away the argument from business, or the wonder from business leaders, as what is the value that IT brings. That argument will totally disappear with a service level agreement. Lastly, but also very important, is it demonstrates, a service level agreement demonstrates IT's commitment to business success. Let's take a look at some of the inhibitors to building a successful service level agreement. There are more inhibitors than this, but I think these are the key inhibitors. First of all, if you do not have good management commitment, of course, like any big project, this isn't going to work. But more importantly, a service level agreement is an agreement between upper IT management, such as the CIO, and upper business management, such as the owner of a P&L. So it's very important to have strong management commitment through this whole process. The cost structure of IT, if that is poorly understood, it's going to take a lot of extra work to build this service level agreement, because there's a lot of different costs in IT, and the more detail you can take those costs down to, the more accurate your prediction of what the cost of delivering the service will be. So if you don't have a good understanding of that cost, it's going to inhibit your ability to build a good service level agreement. The service level agreement introduces a new costing model, as I mentioned earlier in the how come they don't exist. This has to work for both IT and the business. At the end of the day, you're going to go to the business with a contract that says, I can deliver this service at this quality of service at this cost. That may not be acceptable to the business for one reason or another. That is definitely an inhibitor to a successful build of a service level agreement. Lastly, business service knowledge. IT, or lots of IT organizations, focus on technology. They don't necessarily focus on the service that technology delivers to the customers. The more a IT business understands how services are delivered to customers, the less difficulty it will have in building a service level agreement. Okay, now let's go through the service level agreement build process. That concludes the business portion of the presentation. Now we're going to go into the part of the presentation that goes through the different phases of a service level agreement build process. First, we take a look at all the phases together. The service level agreement build process is a total of 5 phases. One of the reasons to look at this from a holistic and high-level point of view is there's some important things that guarantee success. The first is, and probably the most important, select a business partner that you work with well. This is not going to be an easy process, but it's going to be an especially important process to you and to them. So find a good partner there. Secondarily, costing the services is a difficult piece of it. Fortunately, as you can see here, it's in phase 2, but you can actually start it in phase 1 and you need to complete it by phase 4. This I'll discuss a little bit more when we talk about phase 2. Okay, let's discuss phase 1 in a little more detail. Phase 1 is the pre-work phase. This is the phase where you select the business customer to work with. There's some important things about the business customer to consider before you figure out who you're going to work with. Number 1, in this phase you need to understand the underlying technology to support the business service you're going to build the service level agreement around. So if you have a service map in your CMDB that includes this service, that could be very helpful. It's also would be good that if the business partner that you're working with is someone that you've worked with before and you have a good working relationship. The service level agreement process is probably not going to be as smooth as it looks here, and it always helps to do the first one with someone that understands your situation and has a strong motivation for it to succeed. Let's talk about phase 2. Phase 2 is the analysis phase. There's 4 bubbles in this phase, so let's start at the top. Monitoring and event reporting. When you think about, let's say, the availability of a service, there's 2 aspects. There's proactive, which is in the design piece, and then there's reactive, which is what you do when there's an incident. This piece, the monitoring and reporting, has to do with how well are the service components, technology components for that service monitored and reported. So if there is an incident, you can quickly analyze it and restore the service. The second bullet has to do with predicting service availability. A note about that: if you're looking at the total service availability, think of it as an aggregation of a bunch of different component availabilities. And from a probability point of view, you'll find that the component that has the lowest availability will dominate the other components. So if you have something like, say, a disk array that has a very high availability, it may not make sense to even look at that. But in this phase, you'll look at all the technology components and assign, even if you have to estimate, an availability to those components, and then aggregate those together for a holistic service availability number. The next piece has to do with capacity, and that is really around performance. There's a past aspect of this and a future aspect. Look at the past capacity or consumption of the technology resources by the service, and look if there's any areas or times where it got low or it was impacted from a performance point of view. Those would be areas to look at to beef up should you put a service level agreement in place. Then also look at the future, because the future performance, let's say the consumption of the resources may be different than in the past. And as well as you can predict that, that should be done, because that will impact your ability to meet the service level agreement. The bottom bubble has to do with cost services. This is an IT controller task. As I mentioned earlier, you could start it in phase 1 and it has to be done by phase 4. This is going to involve a total cost for that service. We can discuss that more later. Let's take a look at phase 3. Now that we've done the analysis, let's aggregate it and build. So there's 3 bullets here, and I'll talk about the top and the bottom one first and then the one in the middle. So now that we have an availability picture and we have a performance piece, we can build operating level agreements. Those are going to aggregate the performance and availability numbers to a single number to be used with negotiations. The bottom piece has to do with review the underpinning contracts. This is important, and this is also a task that could be started earlier, because it's possible that there is a weak performance number in a negotiated contract, and that might dominate the availability or performance aspect of the service level agreement. So review those, figure out what is in those contracts, and take those and the operating level agreements, aggregate those together, and determine the complete service uptime / performance capability. That'll be used in the next phase, which is negotiation, phase 4. After all the work, we've finally gotten to the point where we do the negotiations. Like any negotiations, it would be best if this was a low-key event, because the businesses had been involved all the way through the process. This is going to be a contract between the CIO and the business leader. Remember, it is possible that no agreement could be reached at this point. It could be that the service is more expensive than the customer expected, or the performance is less than the customer expected. Now, these negotiations actually informally start around phase 2. So, let's go on to phase 5, the operational phase. We've completed the strategy, design, and transition phases. Now it's time for operation. There's a few things to take into consideration here. One is that the technologists working on the technology underlying the services need to understand what they're working on, how important it is, and to take the proper procedural steps around that. The service desk needs to understand if there's an incident against that service, how they should respond. Also, the technologists need to respond to issues around the underlying technology. This is a good time to start a continuous improvement program. I'm sure there's lots of things that could be done potentially around the technology supporting the service or the processes supporting the services that would allow you to provide those services at the levels agreed upon at a lower cost. Also consult with the availability team regarding potential improvements. Technology has about an 18-month half-life. So, as this service level agreement is in force, technology will be changing. It's important that the availability team understand from a service delivery point of view the impact of those changes. Let's go on to the conclusion. Some of my thoughts to leave you with are, it takes a team to build a service level agreement. As we went through the process, you can see that it's going to involve people from lots of different areas of IT with lots of different technological focuses. Some of the phases can be overlapped, not a lot of them, and the critical path is pretty well laid out in the process. Once you build your first SLA, you'll find that the second SLA is much easier because you understand the process. Maybe you've even improved the process, and they will get progressively easier after that. Of course, there's a lot more to building a service level agreement than I've showed you here. However, the time to start is now. Thank you. This has been Jim Fitzgerald from IT Optimization.